we want to branch out of that like JVing space and obviously create our own cash buyers list, right? So when we worked with them, the end buyer, who they work with very closely, he's closing like 20 deals a year. And he's a buy and holder. And so we really we got his number obviously through the contract, and we wanted to reach out with him directly, but we didn't know if that was stepping on the toes of the JVer that we worked with, since that's his contact. So we were wondering if we should, save that relationship with this guy who's, really big in this community, and just ask him directly what, if we think that there's a property that his buyer would be interested in, or if it's okay to use him now as a contact.
Yeah, great question. So, and I'm glad you're asking this question because you're trying to be respectful of your wholesaler. I would definitely reference your JV agreement. It may say something in there around this idea with the buyer. If some JV agreements will say something to the effect of, hey, you understand that this is my buyer and any future business with this buyer will also be with me, or may not. That doesn't mean it's okay to do it, but you'll want to make sure that you always want to operate with ethics and be above board. It's not worth burning a bridge with that wholesaler to go around him directly. Also, at the same time, all wholesalers poach cash buyers. One of the strategies that I do is when I'm on wholesaler list and wholesalers send me, leads and deals through email, is my team will then track those deals and we'll actually reverse engineer and research who the buyers are. And then now we just added new cash buyers, right? So nobody owns a buyer. It's not like that buyer is just their buyer unless they explicitly made that clear to you. And people understand that if I JV with you and my buyer buys your deal, well, now that buyer is kind of, exposed to you. And I can't tell you from now on, you can never go to my buyer. That's part of just the risk of sharing your buyers or whatever. Again, unless they've made that very clear to you that, hey, this is my buyer and you're not to use this buyer again in like any type of a NCNA or a non-compete or anything like that. But again, be careful of that. You want to make sure that that's something that's okay. If that buyer did the wholesaler you JV'd with, were they very careful about exposing that buyer to you? Is your gut telling you that buyer is their buyer and they're kind of weird about it? I mean, what's your gut tell you?
Yeah, my gut is definitely telling me that it's their buyer. I mean, he made it pretty clear he didn't want me having direct contact with him. So there was no direct contact. So that was kind of, and, this guy is like a great guy. He's like, if you guys are ever in San Antonio, make sure to stop by the office. I'll help you guys out with whatever you need. Just like, it was a really great connection there. So we were hesitant about breaking that. And, I think definitely my gut is telling me don't take the buyer. Save the relationships.
Save then if he was protective about you interacting with the buyer, then that's a concern of his, is that you're going to steal his buyer. So I would not do that. I would probably, whereas some wholesalers are like, hey, here's my buyer. I'm going to put you in touch with them. You work with them to the closing. I'm fine. I'm cool. It's not an issue. They're not really hoarding their buyer or worried about it. Okay. So it does, but that doesn't sound like what happened. So I would probably go back through your wholesaler if you've got another deal for that you think would be a good fit for that buyer.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep. And maybe on the next one, have that conversation. Say, hey, look, would you have an issue if I brought deals directly to your buyer? Is that a concern you have? And see what they say. I mean, maybe they're like, you know what? It's all good. No worries. Or maybe they're like, no, that's my buyer. I would be very offended if you did that.
Okay. Awesome.
But just know that nobody owns anybody, right? Like you can't, it's a respect thing that you're doing. So make sure that your wholesaler understands that you're being respectful of his buyer. Like, that's important to know and understand.
Got it.
And just be aware of.
Jerry, I've got a perfect equation to wrap up with that.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just did a deal with a company called New Western. They have a huge cash buyers list, and it was a deal that I didn't really want to touch. I was spread a little thin. That's around the time that we were kind of getting the real thing going, and I was just like hunkered down, focused on that for a few days, and the contract was short. So I put it out to my buddy at New Western, and I was over at the house. It was actually on the Zoom call a week or two ago, and I was just helping the siblings that inherited the property get some of their memorabilia stuff out. And I'm telling you, like 15 or 20 investors were just coming in one after another. And a lot of them were curious who I was or what I was doing there or whatever. And they wanted to exchange contact information. They were basically saying, next time you get a deal like this, contact me directly.
Yeah.
The reason I typed in the chat, listen to your gut, is because my gut told me on that deal that I wouldn't have ran into any of those people if it wasn't for this guy named Spencer that I was working with at New Western.
Yep.
Now, there might be a time and a place that comes in the future for me to reach out to those investors, but to cut out this guy that I've been working with and go directly to those investors personally didn't sit with me well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say is a good answer for Natalia or Nalia. Is just like that hand kind of fed you there. They kind of got you your first deal. It's even if your margins are smaller, if you're working with that guy again, I'd go right back through him again and just be thankful you've got the deals going.
Yeah, it's a respect thing.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, it'll go a long way. Yeah, especially in the beginning when the only reason why you know that buyer is through your wholesaler. I agree. I think that's a respect thing. Now, I think that's right, Jordan, how you handle that. But with New Western, I would also keep in mind, they're a huge company. They're in multiple markets, multiple states, and they've got a massive buyers list, right? So they may be a little less personal about that happening. Like if like it's your buddy or your friend that you know that's at New Western and you have a respect and a relationship there, that's great. But you may ask the question and they may care less. They may be like, yeah, whatever. We've got thousands of buyers. I'm not really worried about you talking to a buyer. So so I guess where I'm going with that is if you're concerned about it, if you're feeling like maybe I'm not having integrity, just ask and then you'll know. Like if you just reach out and say, hey, I met a bunch of these guys. Are you okay if I network with them? Are you okay if I talk with them? Or would you rather, are these relationships that you've developed that are close to you, that are important to you? They may just be numbers on a list to them and they don't even know who they are either and could care less, right? With New Western, there's a higher chance that they sent out an email to thousands of people on their list and there is no relationship or no correlation. Whereas Nalia's example might be much different, where this is somebody that her JV partner cultivated, they know, they work with, there's a relationship there. It's way more important maybe to that than to like a New Western. So, but good. I'm glad you followed your gut. That's the right answer, is follow your gut, be respectful. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. I always like to look at the business and think long-term, like the most important thing we have is our relationships, and burning bridges in this business is the worst thing you could do is burn bridges. It's way too small of an industry.